intervenes between the stomach and the structures on which that viscus lies, and performs therefore the functions of a serous bursa for the stomach. Numerous peritoneal folds extend between the various organs or connect them to the parietes. They serve to hold the viscera in position and, at the same time, enclose the vessels and nerves proceeding to them. They are grouped under the three headings of ligaments, ommenta, and mesenteries. The ligaments will be described with their respective organs. There are two ommenta, the lesser and the greater. The lesser omentum, omentum minus, small omentum, gastrohepatic omentum, is the duplicature which extends to the liver from the lesser curvature of the stomach and the commencement of the duodenum. It is extremely thin, and is continuous with the two layers of peritoneum which cover respectively the antero-superior and posterior-inferior surfaces of the stomach and first part of the duodenum. When these two layers reach the lesser curvature of the stomach and the upper border of the duodenum, they join together and ascend as a double fold to the porta of the liver. To the left of the porta, the fold is attached to the bottom of the fossa for the ductus venosus, along which it is carried to the diaphragm, where the two layers separate to embrace the end of the esophagus. At the right border of the omentum, the two layers are continuous, and form a free margin which constitutes the anterior boundary of the epipleutic foramen. The portion of the lesser omentum extending between the liver and stomach is termed the hypogastric ligament, while that between the liver and the duodenum is the hepatoduodenal ligament. Between the two layers of the lesser omentum, close to the right free margin, are the hepatic artery, the common bile duct, the portal vein, lymphatics, and the hepatic plexus of nerves, all these structures being enclosed in the fibrous capsule, Glisson's capsule. Between the layers of the lesser omentum, where they are attached to the stomach, run the right and left gastric vessels. The greater omentum, omentum majus, great omentum, gastrocolic omentum, is the largest peritoneal fold. It consists of a double sheet of peritoneum, folded on itself so that it is made up of 4 layers. The 2 layers which descend from the stomach and commencement of the duodenum pass in front of the small intestines, sometimes as low down as the pelvis. They then turn upon themselves, and descend again as far as the transverse colon, where they separate and enclose that part of the intestine. These individual layers may be easily demonstrated in the young subject, but in the adult they are more or less inseparably blended. The left border of the greater omentum is continuous with the gastroleonal ligament. Its right border extends as far as the commencement of the duodenum. The greater omentum is usually thin, presents a cribiform appearance, and usually contains some adipose tissue, which in fat people accumulates in considerable quantity. Between its 2 anterior layers, a short distance from the greater curvature of the stomach, is the anastomosis between the right and left gastroepipleutic vessels. The mesenteries are the mesentery proper, the transverse mesocolon, and the sigmoid mesocolon. In addition to these, there are sometimes present an ascending and a descending mesocolon. The mesentery proper, mesenterium, is the broad fan-like fold of peritoneum which connects the convolutions of the jejunum and ileum with the posterior wall of the abdomen. Its root, the part connected with the structures in front of the vertebral column, is narrow, about 15 centimeters long, and is directed obliquely from the duodenojejunal flexure at the left side of the second lumbar vertebra to the right sacroiliac articulation. Its intestinal border is about 6 meters long, and here the 2 layers separate to enclose the intestine, and form its peritoneal coat. It is narrow above, but widens rapidly to about 20 centimeters, and is thrown into various plates or folds. It suspends the small intestine, and contains between its layers the intestinal branches of the superior mesenteric artery, with their accompanying veins and plexuses of nerves, the lacteal vessels, and mesenteric lymph glands. The transverse mesocolon, mesocolon transversus, is a broad fold which connects the transverse colon to the posterior wall of the abdomen. It is continuous with the 2 posterior layers of the greater omentum, which, after separating to surround the transverse colon, join behind it, and are continued backward to the vertebral column, where they diverge in front of the anterior border of the pancreas. This fold contains between its layers the vessels which supply the transverse colon. The sigmoid mesocolon, mesocolon sigmoideum, is the fold of peritoneum which retains the sigmoid colon in connection with the pelvic wall. Its line of attachment forms a V-shaped curve, the apex of the curve being placed about the point of division of the left common iliac artery. The curve being on the medial side of the left psoas major, and runs upward and backward to the apex, from which it bends sharply downward, and ends in the medial plane at the level of the third sacral vertebra. The sigmoid and superior hemorrhoidal vessels run between the two layers of this fold. In most cases, the peritoneum covers only the front and sides of the ascending and descending parts of the colon. Sometimes, however, these are surrounded by the serous membrane and attached to the posterior abdominal wall by an ascending and a descending mesocolon respectively. A fold of peritoneum, the phrenicocolic ligament, is continued from the left colic flexure to the diaphragm opposite the 10th and 11th ribs. It passes below and serves to support the spleen, and therefore has received the name of susteniculum lienus. The appendices epicloacae are small pouches of the peritoneum filled with fat and situated along the colon and upper part of the rectum. They are chiefly appended to the transverse and sigmoid parts of the colon. Peritoneal recesses or fossae. Retroperitoneal fossae. In certain parts of the abdominal cavity, there are recesses of peritoneum forming cul-de-sacs or pouches, which are of surgical interest in connection with the possibility of the occurrence of retroperitoneal herniae. The largest of these is the omental bursa, already described, but several others, of smaller size, require mention, and may be divided into three groups, viz., duodenal, cecal, and intersigmoid. Duodenal fossae, three are fairly constant, viz. A. The inferior duodenal fossa, present in from 70 to 75% of cases, is situated opposite the third lumbar vertebra on the left side of the ascending portion of the duodenum. Its opening is directed upward, and is bounded by a thin sharp fold of peritoneum with a concave margin, called the duodenomesocolic fold. The tip of the index finger introduced into the fossa under the fold passes some little distance behind the ascending portion of the duodenum. B. The superior duodenal fossa, present in from 40 to 50% of cases, often coexists with the inferior one, and its orifice looks downward. It lies on the left of the ascending portion of the duodenum, in front of the second lumbar vertebra, and behind a sickle-shaped form of peritoneum, the duodenal jejunal fold, and has a depth of about 2 centimeters. C. The duodenal jejunal fossa exists in from 15 to 20% of cases, but has never yet been found in conjunction with the other forms of duodenal fossae. It can be seen by pulling the jejunum downward and to the right, after the transverse colon has been pulled upward. It is bounded above by the pancreas, to the right by the aorta, and to the left by the kidney. Beneath is the left renal vein. It has a depth of about 2 to 3 centimeters, and its orifice, directed downward and to the right, is nearly circular and will admit the tip of the little finger. Cecal fossae, paracecal folds or fossae. There are three principal pouches or recesses in the neighborhood of the cecum. A. The superior iliocecal fossa is formed by a fold of peritoneum arching over the branch of the ileocolic artery which supplies the ileocolic junction. The fossa is a narrow chink situated between the mesentery of the small intestine, the ileum, and the small portion of the cecum behind. B. The inferior ileocecal fossa is situated behind the angle of the junction of the ileum and cecum. It is formed by the ileocecal fold of peritoneum, bloodless fold of Treves, the upper border of which is fixed to the ileum, opposite its mesenteric attachment, while the lower border, passing over the ileocecal junction, joins the mesenterial of the vermiform process, and sometimes the process itself. Between this fold and the mesenterial of the vermiform process is the inferior ileocecal fossa. It is bounded above by the posterior surface of the ileum and the mesentery. in front and below by the ileocecal fold, and behind by the upper part